If you have good wind, use wind. If you don't have wind, use solar.
Coming up on Frontiers, the quest for new sources of energy. The State Fair is one place to look for answers, and a surprising number of Alaskans want off the grid.
The most valuable thing that we have done is sparked people's imagination to show them that if they can imagine it, they can do it.
Later in our program, the Chena Renewable Energy Fair is about the power of ideas. Could one of those hold promise for rural Alaska?
Sponsorship for Frontiers with Rhonda McBride is provided by Kupik Corporation and Spinard Builders Supply. Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to Frontiers. Well, it was a week of motorcades, Secret Service, and communities not used to such high-profile visits. Still, it was exciting for many to share our frontier state with the President of the United States.
America is full of dreamers. We push new frontiers by choice. That's what makes us Americans.
While the president enjoyed Alaska's hospitality, he summed up his visit to our state as the world's wake-up call on climate change. But he also promised millions of dollars to help Alaskans cope on a number of fronts.
So we're going to deploy more new clean energy projects on native lands. And that's going to reduce dependence on fossil fuels, promote new jobs, and new growth in your communities.
Conversations about renewable energy are now happening all over our state, awareness at an all-time high. While the president was traveling in Alaska, many were headed to Palmer for the state fair, where the spirit of innovation is alive and well. As far back as the Middle Ages, fairs have played a role in society. Yes, there's the food.
We'll see.
Giant pumpkins and ways to do things bigger and better.
We come here to learn things and play.
I just like seeing all the people, and all the exhibits.
Gimmicks and gadgets alike share the stage at the fair, which continues to serve as a show and tell for what's new, what might capture the imagination. Just look up. Just like windmills, time keeps turning. Old technology cycles back. New applications and new ways to tie them together.
When I did my first cabin for myself, I didn't know anything.
Kirk Garut's specialty is living off the grid.
I'm 17 miles from the closest power pole, but I use the wind and the sun to power my place, and I also have a backup generator.
Now he's made a business out of helping people do what he does.
This is my front yard at Flathorn Lake. There's 12 individual modules in this tracker. 1,280 watt modules. They're on a pole. It tracks the sun. I got an office, I got 2 bathrooms, and I got a mudroom.
Kirk Garut helps each customer tap a mix of wind and solar power and navigate through a maze of challenges and options such as batteries for storage and backup generators.
There is no normal.
In Alaska?
Yeah, especially in Alaska.
There is really no one-size-fits-all here.
Almost everybody that walks by here has 2 or 3 freezers, a couple refrigerators, more than 1 computer.
While Kirk Garut's company, Susitna Energy, targets the homestead market, he's also put some of his systems in places like Good News Bay, an off-the-road system community in southwest Alaska where small windmills were installed to power a water treatment plant.
They're kicking butt. They're spinning constantly. The cost of running that facility has dropped dramatically.
Susitna Energy also sold 10 windmills to Perryville on the Alaskan Peninsula. The community installed them with local labor, and the manufacturer says Perryville has offset about 5,000 gallons of diesel a year, which allows the community to use a smaller, less costly generator.
We have enough wind in Alaska to power almost every place.
The biggest obstacle is money. and whether investments in small units like these pencil out compared to larger systems that offer an economy of scale.
Very, very interesting.
But one German visitor to the fair believes small-scale options are needed too, and not as easy to find in his hometown of Dresden.
If you are less 10 meters, you don't need permit for this.
In Germany, the rules are very strict for wind generation. Peter Teichmann has solar panels at his home and wants to expand to include wind generation. He says he hasn't seen small units like these sized for a private home before.
I don't hear any noise.
No, it's very quiet.
The wind and solar systems sold here can also be connected to the grid.
Sun comes out, it's running your house. Anything you're not using, it gets exported to the grid. If you need more than they're producing, you're getting that extra from the grid. So it's a two-way street instead of a one-way street.
In fact, the power produced by these windmills is sent to the Matanuska Electric Association, enough to power a booth or two here at the fair.
Alternative energy is America's independence, okay? I mean, seriously.
With its purple mountains majesty, the fair is fertile ground for modern tinkers and problem solvers. Now, the cost of a system for a private home that is on the grid can range between $12,000 and $20,000. Well, there are currents in the air and currents in the water. When it comes to energy, both can generate power. Up next, a project that got the attention of the Obama administration. Much of the Obama administration's trip to Alaska focused on the urgency of addressing climate change, but the Secretary of State pointed out one bright spot.
Energy policy is the solution to climate change.
The Secretary had praise for Igiugig, a Bristol Bay community with a population that hovers between 60 to 70 people. Igiugig has been a test site for using the river's current to generate power. It also has some wind generators. The motivation, the community has been dependent on expensive diesel power to run its generators, with the cost of power running almost $1 per kilowatt hour. That compares to about 16 cents in Anchorage. John Carey says it's exciting that the village can now generate a third of its power with a river generator.
These are the kinds of creative solutions that will enable Arctic communities to endure and to thrive in the future without having to rely on dirtier and ultimately destructive sources of power.
Well, it's exciting to have the Secretary of State point to a specific project and a specific community. And joining us now to talk about that, Doug Johnson with Ocean Renewable Power Company, the company that actually got this Igiugig project off the ground, as well as Mira Kohler, who is with AVEC, the Alaska Village Electric Cooperative. Well, Doug, let's start with you and just tell us, was that very exciting to have this highlighted at the Glacier Conference to an international audience?
Rhonda, it was fabulous, tremendously exciting, and many things happened around this. This has been a long-term endeavor for me personally and for Ocean Renewable Power Company. I've been involved with the company now for 8 years here in Alaska. And one of the things that's probably the most exciting about this is the community of Igiugig. One of the young leaders there, Alexandra Salmon, was actually an invitee and spent time with the president. And the community has really embraced us as a company and been tremendous support and help for us to be able to be successful there.
Well, let's explain to people how this river generation works.
Well, as you can see in the video here, this is what we call our RivGen turbine. And it's designed to be deployed in the river, and it's in the fastest moving water in the river right there. And what happens is we actually submerge the turbine, and once it's submerged, it starts to generate electricity. And those are the turbines there, and you'll start to see it's starting to list a little bit because as we submerge it, one side goes down first all the way to the bottom, and then the other side goes down. So that's what's actually happening in this video and preparing itself to be, in its deployment phase, preparing itself to actually generate electricity. And this machine generates 25 kilowatts of electricity, which has been noted as about a third of what the community needs.
So what about the fish swimming underneath there?
Well, this is really something that we've been spending a lot of time and attention on, working very closely with scientists in the river, environment. We have a contractor, LGL, that has been working with us to monitor the river and monitor the fish and the interaction with the turbine. And that's really critical. We had 1.5 million fish swim by this turbine while in operation, and we've had no negative interaction with those fish.
Well, that's good news. And what about news from the president this week that he wants to invest more in helping rural Alaska cope with its high energy prices?
Well, again, this is fabulous news, and it's going to take a significant investment. Companies like ours, there are more new technologies on the horizon, and we have existing technologies in wind, geothermal, solar that also needs support to get deployed in these communities. And it's great to hear that the president's taking an interest, and it's very clear that that interest is going to be well received here.
Well, Mira, you've been working with energy and rural Alaska for a long time. How do you feel about the president's announcement? Is that going to help AVEC?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think the president is sincere. He understands the linkage between energy and a sustainable economy, and he actually definitely grasps the high cost of power here. I know that I've been in conversations with key staff members from the White House in the last few days. I think his trip here to Alaska really has brought a lot of high-powered attention to what the needs of the state are.
Well, let's talk a little bit about AVEC's presence. It has a huge footprint, more than 50 communities across the state. Tell us a little bit about the job that you face, serving all these different kind of customers.
So we started out, as your graphic says, in 1968, and we now serve 56 communities. Last year, we brought Bethel on board in May of last year, so that they are our largest community by quite a large percentage. The next largest community is 1,100, and of course the smallest is 76.
Well, that's a big job to have to deal with communities of different sizes. And, you know, let's look at the cost per kilowatt hour, what people in rural Alaska are paying for their electricity. I mean, it's astounding.
It really is, and you'll see that the highest cost in our communities is more than 70 cents, and that's for a couple of villages up in the northwest where we have to fly fuel in. Bethel, as you can see, is our lowest cost community. When we took over Bethel a year ago, they were paying about 58 cents a kilowatt hour. And today, their latest cost of power is less than 40 cents. So they've seen a significant change since we've come on board.
And Anchorage pays 16 cents a kilowatt hour.
It does, and you know, we can't, we hope someday we'll be able to get to that. We do have some ambitious ideas about how we can get there. We would really like to be able to get there. We believe that affordable energy is the underpinning of every sustainable community and every sustainable enterprise, and you can't do it with 48 and 58 cent power.
Well, just so people understand the economies of scale here, we look at Carr's, Huffman's use of power within a year. That's a pretty telling statistic compared to your average village.
It is indeed. I use the Huffman cars. It's the grocery store that I go to that's close to where I live in South Anchorage, and it's just a modest-sized grocery store. If you compare them with the lower 48, they're probably a quarter of the size of an average store in the lower 48, but you know, one of our villages, two of our villages equal one Huffman cars.
Let's talk a little bit more about Bethel, because it's kind of the hub of Southwest Alaska. And, you know, it struggled with high energy costs to keep its economy rolling and develop jobs. What has AVEC been able to do to bring the cost of power down for Bethel?
We have reduced the cost of power in Bethel, which is a big boon, especially for commercial businesses where energy is a huge component of their operating cost. We have not been able to touch the cost of heat because obviously we don't deliver heat. When you look at it overall, the cost of heat is crippling communities, and so we are very focused on finding solutions for that as well.
Well, do you think that you might have wind for Bethel at some point?
We certainly intend to. The community itself, the city of Bethel, several years ago had applied for and won a grant from the state of Alaska to put in some wind generation, but they were never able to come to an agreement with the local utility. They transferred those funds to us, and so we're currently in the process. We've just executed a lease for a Met tower to measure the wind and hope to have a wind turbine in the next year and a half to 2 years.
So how much of a difference does wind make when it's combined with diesel power?
It can make a significant difference. We have, as you probably can show in some of your graphics, we have wind generation in 11 of our villages, and it serves 15 communities because we've been connecting communities as well. Best case scenario, we figure you can displace about 30 to 35% of the diesel fuel used for electric generation. What we also do in these communities is we use the excess wind when the wind is blowing more than the community can absorb, and we use that for heat as well. And we actually have worked with the local water and sewer facility, for example, and we preheat their water with electricity that's surplus from the wind. So we do innovative things with that to increase the penetration of wind.
So Igiagig is a very small village, yes. And it's very different than, it's a scenario very different from what AVEC typically deals with. Is there room for both types of small-scale operations and sort of the AVAC approach?
Oh, absolutely. I think Igiagig is very blessed by location. They're on the Kvichak River, which is a very clear river, and so Doug doesn't have to deal with a lot of the in-river debris issues that you have in the Yukon and the Kuskokwim River. So the in-river hydrokinetic generation is, we're trying to bring that to commercial operation, but it's got a lot more challenges in the larger rivers than it does in the Kvichak River. But absolutely, where you have dedicated individuals in the community that are willing to invest the emotional and physical energy into their system, they can achieve an affordable system. But $1 a kilowatt hour is pretty rough times.
And the incentive is there with the economics. And as Mayor pointed out, it's really clear that it does take community leadership to make this happen. And we found that every community that we've been involved in around the country with our technology, it's really been a community that's invited us, that we've worked with closely, that has really added to our success and really allowed us to do what we need to do with the technology evolution.
So do you think that there are some applications for other communities? Because the Kvichak River is unique.
Oh, absolutely. There's tremendous application around the state of Alaska, not only for the river communities, but also for tidal opportunities. There's some significant tidal opportunities. The one we're looking at very closely is the community of False Pass in the Aleutians, and they have a wonderful resource there, and we're working to develop that as well.
Well, all of this is so exciting, and we're going to continue our conversation on the web. So join us then. Thank you very much, Mira Kohler and Doug Johnson.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And up next, we take you to Chena Hot Springs near Fairbanks to the Renewable Energy Fair. The big buzz this year, a prototype of a portable power generator that makes both heat and electricity. Could it be a game changer for rural Alaska?
You know, and we show people that things can be done.
At Chena Hot Springs near Fairbanks, you never know what wild idea might catch fire at the resort's annual Renewable Energy Fair. This year, some old technology made a comeback. When it comes to renewable energy in Alaska, ideas flow like water. At least they do here at Chena Hot Springs, where hot water is used to generate electricity and heat greenhouses to keep things growing all year round.
There's no secret here, no magic. It's just a matter of doing things. You know, and we show people that things can be done. When you share, you care.
Bernie Carl is about to show people something he believes could be a game changer for Alaska.
If you're not walking forward, then you're walking backwards. And if you're standing still, what the heck are you doing?
So we're going to walk forward, right?
Let's walk forward and learn about a Stirling engine.
First, let's turn to Bill Nye, the science guy, for help.
Now notice there are two pistons. There's this little...
He's got a great video on YouTube that explains how the Stirling engine is basically a hot air engine.
And as the heat from this water warms the bottom plate, it makes the air expand. The expanding air drives the piston.
You can find all kinds of models of Stirling engines on YouTube, like this soda can with a candle in the bottom. It shows how you can create energy by moving hot and cold air back and forth. The first engine of this kind was invented 200 years ago by Robert Stirling, a Scottish minister who saw too many of his parishioners injured in steam engine accidents. He wanted a safer alternative.
It could be that the Stirling engine's going to make a big comeback because it's so efficient. And maybe you'll be the scientist or engineer who finds a way to use it in extremely important applications. You could, dare I say it, change the world.
But a power generator has to operate 24/7. It has to operate 8,760 hours per year.
Could Stefan Larsson, a soft-spoken Swedish inventor, be that person?
He's the Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, all rolled into one.
This could perhaps be Stefan Larsson's most important invention, a portable power unit he calls the Genius, which incorporates Stirling engine technology.
You're kind of one of the first people to see it. We've not made any press releases, we've not done any marketing.
Chena fairgoers got to see a prototype of what's basically a miniature power plant sized for the home. It can run on just about any fuel and provides both heat and electricity.
And remember, you're not paying for those heat and electricity bills anymore. You're just paying for fuel.
In this case, a tray of wooden pellets is enough to run the Genius for several days. The wood burns and fires up a Stirling engine, old technology, but with a new application.
I like to use the analogy that we've brought Cinderella back to the ball. We've dressed her up, we've got her working, and she's going to be impressing quite a few people.
For the same amount of money that you're heating your house now for, you can have your electricity.
Each unit has a battery to store power, and they're also designed to be connected to each other to create a micro power grid.
Can you imagine that if you have a bush village of 50 families and you have 50 of these running, do you understand what that does for the village? They all work together.
Carl says that this invention could do away with costly village power plants.
So the return on investment is very, very short.
1 year.
The governor and other Alaskan leaders are interested in its potential. Some want to see it tested here to see how it works under Alaskan conditions.
We really would like to see this new piece of equipment maybe partner with a village.
In some ways, it sounds almost too good to be true. The engine is designed with proper maintenance to run for decades.
It's pretty much the same kind of materials we're using in jet engines.
The Genius is still under development at Inresol, Larsson's company in Sweden. The goal, to figure out how to mass produce these to get the price tag down to about $10,000 a unit.
To make it so simple to use, so anyone can use it, has been by far the hardest task.
Larsson has dubbed the Genius the people's generator. So are you the Steve Jobs of energy?
Time will tell, I guess.
Time teaches us many things. Take this old car. It's being run on energy created by burning wood chips, technology developed in World War II when gasoline was rationed. And with some of the highest costs of energy in the nation, it may be worth it for Alaskans to go back to the future. Now, the genius of the Genius is that it can burn all kinds of things, natural gas, even coconut shells, and it can be adapted for hydro and wind. A lot of people wonder why the Stirling engine, an external combustible engine, was shelved in favor of the internal combustible engine, which is used in your car. Well, the bottom line is that gas for a long time was a cheap source of fuel, which made the internal combustible engine very attractive. Well, we want to thank you for joining us. Here's to dreams of new frontiers and making them happen. We'll see you next week.